So a person who is facing a first-time drug possession charge may be eligible for a diversion agreement. Most favorably, that may consist of a deferred prosecution agreement, which does not require a person to plead guilty or admit that they've committed a crime. Instead, prosecutors would put a person's case on hold for a 4-month period, during which time the defendant would complete 32 hours of community service in exchange for the prosecutors dropping their charges. There are other kinds of diversion agreements, like deferred sentencing agreements, that also have the same end result, which is community service in exchange for a dismissal of a person's charges. But a deferred sentencing agreement has a higher community service requirement and also requires a person to initially enter a guilty plea that they could later on move to withdraw, meaning remove from the record, and then have the prosecutors dismiss their case. So all diversion agreements have the end result of a person's charges being dismissed. And many people who are facing first-time drug possession charges may be eligible for one of these kinds of diversion agreements. A person who has a lengthier drug offense history may not be eligible for a diversion agreement, but they may be eligible for a community court called drug court. Drug court is a little bit more intensive than doing a diversion agreement, but can still have the end result of a person having their charges dismissed. Drug court is a treatment and testing-based community court where a person would have to go through a series of randomized drug testing and a more intensive treatment regimen over a course of several months. A person who is going through drug court would have a little more supervision than they may have under a diversion agreement. They would probably be required to undergo regular, weekly, or maybe even more than once a week drug testing and have a fairly intensive treatment schedule that could consist of several treatment sessions per week. They may also be required to come into court for treatment updates on a monthly basis. But a person who successfully completes out the treatment schedule and is able to be consistently testing negative during their drug tests would still be in a position to have their drug charges dropped at the completion of drug court. So drug court can be a good option for people who are willing to stick with a slightly more intensive treatment and testing regimen, but still want to have the end result of their charges being dropped. So it's important for a person who is facing drug charges to explain their specific situation to their attorney or an attorney who they might be considering hiring, so they can have a good idea as to whether they may be eligible for some of these kinds of treatment options, whether they may be eligible for diversion agreements. And it's important to have an attorney who understands and is knowledgeable of all the different possible arrangements that can be worked out in a drug possession case that can still get a person a good result in the end.